Hello, everybody. That was smooth. Let me pray for my agility. Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we just come to you with such deep thanks. We're so thankful to be able to serve you in this body. We know that but for you, we would not be here, and we could not serve the people of North Carolina or you. So we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you that we've been given this honor, this responsibility to serve well. And we just pray that you would help us to do the right thing today and every day to bring you honor and glory. And for that we give thanks. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Senator Berger is recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Madam President. The Journal of March 12, 2025 has been examined and is found to be correct. I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal and that it stand approved as written.
Without objection, the Journal for March 12, 2025 stands approved as written. Leaves of absence are requested and without objection are granted for Senators Applewhite, Batch, Garrett, Murdoch, Salvador, and Settle. We will now move to the calendar. Local bills.
Madam President.
Yes. For what purpose do you rise, Senator Rabin?
A motion, please, Madam President.
Please state your motion.
Thank you. Madam President, move that Senate Bill 261, Energy and Security and Affordability Act, be moved to top of today's calendar. And also, Madam President, move under Senate Rule 50, the body may hear a bill on its second and third readings the same day if ordered by 3/5 vote of the members present and voting. I move that we proceed with second and third reading of Senate Bill 261 today.
Madam President.
Senator Meyer, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to issue an objection to the gentleman's ruling on Rule 50 and ask that we delay third reading of this bill. I understand this may lead us to a vote.
All right, we will proceed with a vote on the motion to have second and third reading today. All in favor will vote aye. All opposed will vote no. 5 seconds will be allowed for voting, and the clerk will record the vote. Yes, okay, let's go around the room. Senator Lowe? Lowe, no. Senator Britt? Senator Britt? Senator Britt? Okay. Senator Overcash? Aye. Overcash, aye. Senator Daniel? Senator Daniel? Senator Daniel? Senator Buck Newton? Aye. Newton, aye.
Madam President.
Yes. For what purpose do you rise?
My vote should have been no on that motion.
To change your vote. So that is blue, no. 27 having voted in the affirmative, 15 in the negative. Oh. Oh my God. Okay. You just made it. Britt? Aye. Britt, aye. Daniel, aye. Daniel, aye. So 29 in the affirmative, 15 in the negative. That exceeds the 3/5 amount, and the motion carries. So we will start with Public Bill 261. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 261, Energy, Security, and Affordability Act.
Senator Newton is recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Members, we have an opportunity today to save North Carolinians a significant amount of money. And you know, when I listened to the state of the state last night, I heard our governor talk about how child care is too expensive, the cost of housing is too expensive, and on the list goes. People are burdened by rising costs in our state. And we have an opportunity today to act to make sure their electric bills are as low as achievable, as low as possible. And unless we act on this bill, unless we pass this bill, they will have higher rates than otherwise necessary. Rate pressure is up. It doesn't mean they're going to go down, but without our action today, electric rates are going to rise significantly, and it's really unrefuted and irrefutable that unless we act, rates are going to rise unnecessarily. We passed 951 in 2021 with an effort to thread the needle between doing our part on carbon reduction as a state and participate in that effort, but do it in a way that did not crush the poor and did not crush our industry, our economy of North Carolina. Because if you look at Germany, you look at California, you look at other states, nations that have gone all in on what they're calling clean energy, and their rates are escalating significantly. We didn't want that to happen in North Carolina. So, but what we found after now some implementation of our bill is that there's an we knew there was an interim goal. We agreed to that goal, but we gave the commission ample discretion to step over that goal if it was in the best interest of North Carolinians. If it were reasonable to ignore that interim goal, they would do so, and there's plenty of language in the bill that you could point to. However, we have found that in reality, the existence of that goal is confusing. It's confusing to the commission, it's confusing to the public staff, it's confusing to Duke Energy, and it's being treated as something that's sacrosanct, when the real goal in the bill is carbon neutrality on our grid by 2050. The modeling that's been done to give the commission what it needs to make its decision on the next increment of generation in North Carolina, which is supposed to be under the original 951, least cost and maintain or improve the reliability of the grid, the modeling has said to the commission, you can't build any more nuclear than 2 small modular reactors, and you can't build any natural gas after 2034, but we know that the model picks the least cost, left alone to its own devices, it would pick the least cost path forward. That would include new nuclear, that would include more natural gas, but we have artificially, because of the interim goal, I'm not blaming anyone, not blaming the commission, public staff, or Duke, we have artificially said, you can't look beyond 2034. Your near-term action plans have got to assume none of those are available. And on top of that, they put a carbon price on new natural gas of, was it $10,000 per metric ton of carbon, which is 50 times the Biden administration's social cost of carbon, and is substantially more of a multiple than the regional greenhouse gas initiative would put on the price of carbon. So we got out of whack with that interim goal. We're still committed to the carbon neutrality in 2050, but we now see with our proof positive that rates are going to be higher than they need to be because of that interim goal. In fact, when we started 951, we thought customers were going to pay $3.50 per megawatt per kilowatt hour more, but it turns out, and let me get the numbers here for you. It turns out that if we leave the interim goal in, so we thought in 951 customer bills would rise $3.50 a month approximately. We now know, because of the public staff's modeling, we're looking at $55 to $80 a month increase in monthly bills by 2038, $55 a month by 2033, and $80 by 2038. Industrial customers, a 50 megawatt industrial customer, is already seeing from 20 to 24 a 28% rate increase, and that's a $6.7 million in additional electric costs per year, and a projected 145% increase by 2038. We've already seen Parkdale Mills shut down in Sanford costing jobs, and the reason they cited was high unsustainable energy costs for their operation. Folks, we don't need more evidence. We've got the public staff that has said in their modeling that if we were to remove the interim goal, we would save North Carolinians some $13 billion. Okay, so what's the downside? Who gets hurt if we do this? Nobody gets hurt. This doesn't cost a penny. We just remove the interim goal and we're saving North Carolinians billions of dollars, which you heard from the governor last night. There's sensitivity to people need downward pressure on the inflationary pressures in this state. So this is something we can do. It doesn't hurt anyone. We still stick to the 2050 goal, and this is just the right thing to do, folks. When you think about the burden of energy bills on the poor, think about low-income residents. They typically live in older, less efficient energy efficient homes with outdated appliance, insulation, et cetera. 1 in 3 low-income households struggle to pay their electricity bill each year. The North Carolina Justice Center reports that 1.4 million residents are energy cost burdened. Why would we keep the interim goal? Removing the interim goal means you're standing with North Carolinians. If you vote not to remove the interim goal, who are you standing with? This doesn't cost a dime. It doesn't cost anyone. Why would we not stand with North Carolinians? Let's reduce electricity costs. Let's vote a yes for 261. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam President, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
A leave of absence is requested and without objection is granted for Senator Johnson. Senator Mayfield, for what purpose do you rise?
To speak on the bill.
You have the floor to speak on the bill.
Thank you. The first thing I'd like to do is apologize for the fact that you're getting me instead of Senator Salvador. She's a lot smarter on these issues. She's much more eloquent, and frankly, she's a lot nicer than I am. So, Senator Newton, we've talked about this bill several times this week, and as I've said each time, I appreciate your efforts to reduce energy costs to consumers, or at least what we're really talking about, to be clear, is mitigating the rate of increase. That's all we're talking about. Energy rates are not going down. Let's just all be super clear about that. So thank you for raising the opportunity to talk about mitigating increasing costs. Now, I'm not going to be offering any amendments today. We had planned, we did object to third reading, and the reason for that was so that we could have a little more time to meet with the public staff, as Senator Newton has already done, to understand this modeling better, to talk about what would happen if you had different inputs. You know, we don't know any of that, and we're still going to have that briefing. I'm just sorry it's not going to be able to inform our conversation on this bill. So I do have a few comments on the bill. As to the second portion of this bill, the construction work in progress, my main concern here is around the public involvement process that goes with that annual review, the public engagement opportunities that go with that annual review process. Those do exist now in the rules of the Utility Commission. I think a lot of us would feel better if those were actually codified to prevent future commissions from limiting meaningful public involvement in that annual review process if it's going to become more important, which it does under this bill. So I have several concerns related to the elimination of the deadline for 70% carbon reduction. My main point that I want to make here is this bill undoes a key element of House Bill 951, which Senator Newton has said, and it's being pushed through in a manner that is unlike any other work that we have done collectively on energy. So a lot of folks are new, so you may not have this history, but in 2007, the legislature passed Senate Bill 3. In 2017, we passed House Bill 589, and then, of course, in 2021, we passed House Bill 951. Each one of those bills was the result of weeks, if not months, of negotiations, conversations with stakeholders, roundtables, extensive work in both chambers, and ultimately careful negotiations to strike the right balance between what was good for customers, what was good for businesses, what was good for consumers, what was good for Duke, and what was good for the state as a whole. This bill, by contrast, has involved none of that. This bill was introduced on Monday, it had a hearing on Tuesday, it was in rules on Wednesday, and here we are today. There was no information sharing prior to the bill. There has been limited information sharing since the bill. There has been absolutely no discussion of the costs of this, the potential costs of this bill, and I will challenge the assertion that there's no downside, that there's no risk to this at all, that there's no cost. We've only talked about the purported benefit of cost savings of making such an important change. There's been zero efforts at collaboration, absolutely none, which again is very different than what we had in the past. And all of that for no purpose that has been identified to me. I have asked several people, why are we pushing this through so quickly? What is the benefit? It's not like rates are going to go down tomorrow unless there is some deadline that I am unaware of. So I still ask the question why this has to happen today. We will not get a new carbon plan for another year and a half. And again, rates are not going to change because we passed this bill today. I cannot see any disadvantage in waiting until next week. And I'll finally just say that we would have gladly engaged in this discussion if it had been offered. Senator Salvador and I were very involved in the negotiations on House Bill 951 and would have been completely open to having a conversation about this. I'm a firm believer in the idea that a better process gets everybody to a better outcome, and maybe even a bipartisan one on this one. I don't see that out of the realm of possibility, but that's not where this went. So the speed and the lack of collaboration means that most of us have not seen this analysis that was requested by of the public utilities staff. Even Duke hasn't seen it. We were sent a handful of graphs after the meeting on Tuesday that clearly show something, but there's no information on the inputs or the assumptions or even the question as it was framed to the modelers. We have no idea what those factors were, and the change of any little lever in a model can make a big difference in the outcome. Now, the news this morning, and I'll just give you an example. So the modeling apparently that was requested sort of talks about what happens by 2050 if you take this interim goal out. Well, there were some news reports this morning that the public staff shared that by 2038, so that's just another number along the way to 2050, that the difference between rates under 951 with the 2030 70% deadline and those under this bill without the deadline would be only 0.3% each year. 1/3 of 1%. 1/3 of 1%. So what does this look like in your bill? So if your bill is $150 a month, so if your energy bill is $150 a month, this bill, Senate Bill 261, would mean that you pay only 45 cents more per month or an additional $5.40 a year. Now that is a vastly different number than 13 billion. Now, if you aggregate it all, maybe it comes to 13 billion. I don't know. But again, framed that way, the benefits are not so significant. And again, we have no idea what the costs, risks, and trade-offs are to this change. To say that no one gets hurt by this change is completely premature. If this bill allows, for instance, the construction of more gas plants, what does that mean for the cost to customers if the cost of natural gas skyrockets, as it has done multiple times over the last few decades? What does that mean? Was that modeled? I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But certainly if the price of natural gas spikes, that impacts the model, it impacts the cost, and regardless, it's a lot more expensive than the cost of solar, which is of course free once it's installed. I heard someone say earlier this week that all modeling is wrong, but some modeling is useful. I'm not saying that this modeling is wrong. I am saying that we should understand the assumptions and exactly what questions were asked before we can endorse this finding. Because as I said, with just a few changes, the outcome could be quite different. The second concern I have is with completely rejecting the idea of an interim target. We've already blown through the 2030 target. The effective target date now is 2035 under the carbon plan that was just approved 4 months ago. So I'm not quite sure what's still sacrosanct about 2030. I think that date seems to just not even be real anymore. But not having any target, even an aspirational target, could mean that we don't stay on track to get to our 2050 goal. Having interim deadlines is a standard accepted practice when you're trying to get to a big audacious goal. You need to measure it on your way there, or you really have no idea whether you're going to get there. And we should understand the risks of varying from this standard practice. Finally, thank you, Senator Newton. I want to for raising the concerns about low-income customers. I will remind this body that we had the opportunity in 951 to reduce energy costs through incentivizing or mandating stronger energy efficiency programs and programs specifically targeted to low-income customers. In fact, Democrats offered about 24 options for energy efficiency programs that could have been included in that bill, including some that Duke Energy runs in other states and would have been happy to run here. Every single one of those suggestions was rejected by this body. Every single one. I think we can agree that the best dollar for customers is the one that stays in their pocket. This bill acknowledges that. There are multiple ways to keep dollars in people's pockets, and it is unfortunate that this bill only purports to achieve this goal in 2 ways, again, that we don't all fully understand. Obviously, this bill is going to pass today, but I certainly hope that the House will have an opportunity to dig into it in a way that we did not.
Senator Meyer, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to debate the bill.
You have the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I appreciate the high-minded debate from Senator Mayfield, Senator Newton, and the input we got from Senator Salvador. This bill made me think of a very lowbrow situation, which is I used to drink in this bar called the Kraken. It was literally in a double-wide trailer. I don't drink there anymore because I got divorced and remarried and cleaned up my act, but when I was drinking there, I was drinking there for a few reasons. One was I could walk there, and the second was there were $2 beers. And the third was the people who drank at the Kraken didn't actually want to talk to me about politics. So it was a great place to go on Friday nights. But there was 2 exceptions that they actually would want to talk to me about politics. One was everyone there, probably like everyone in here, hated their cable company and always wanted to complain to me about that. And the second was they all hated Duke Energy because they all understood that Duke Energy is a regulated monopoly, and they all wanted to know how come our rates keep going up when Duke keeps making so much profits. And if we wanted to take care of people who are drinking $2 beers, then what we should do in legislation is require the monopoly utility provider to have low-income assistance programs like they have in other states that they do not offer here, or put in a mandatory return on profits like other states have on their mandated utilities that we do not have here. That would be the best way to get cheaper rates and money back in the pockets of people drinking $2 beers. Thank you.
Is there further discussion or debate? Senator Newton, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam President. To speak on the bill.
You have the floor to speak on the bill.
Yeah, so members, I'd just like to address a couple of those comments that were made. First of all, what do they fear? If we remove the interim goal, all that does is remove an obstacle for this commission to see all the way to 2050 instead of being stopped at 2034. They can look all the way to 2050 on behalf of North Carolinians and make the least cost selection of generation that maintains or improves the reliability of the grid. If the best portfolio is what's already been ordered with the interim goal in place, they can reaffirm that portfolio. We're not taking any arrows out of the quiver. We're giving them more options. And their job is to bring our next generation of electricity to North Carolinians at the least possible cost and maintain the reliability of the grid. So this is just a positive, I believe, for the commission because it opens up the full selection menu and doesn't arbitrarily, because of assumptions made in the model, prevent the commission from looking at nuclear long-term, prevent the commission from considering more natural gas, which we know can be built because there will be gas molecules available after 2034 here in North Carolina. So there's nothing to fear. If where they are is the perfect place to land the plane for North Carolinians, they can reaffirm that. No downside. Nobody is hurt by this bill. There's only upside. Then you talk about the argument that, well, it's only a small percentage increase in rates. Well, there are a lot of people in our state that cannot afford a small percentage increase. But guess what? That small percentage adds up. What we know is that by moving the deadline of meeting the interim goal from 2030 to 2034, our electric co-ops have told me they understand that to be a $4 billion savings for North Carolina. 4 years of delay on the interim goal is worth $4 billion. That's real money in my estimation. And if we don't remove that goal, that's $4 billion North Carolinians will have to pay. On top of that, the public staff modeling, the modeling says that if you remove the interim goal, it will save North Carolinians $13 billion. That's real money for North Carolinians. And you can remodel this any way you want, and I think a legitimate model will tell you that's actually low. I believe, in personal opinion, no modeling, that we will save more money for North Carolinians than $13 billion if this goal goes away, the interim goal. So Senator Mayfield made the comment that 2030 is really not real. It's already been kicked down the road. If it's not real, how does it hurt to remove it? Let's get rid of it. Let's end the confusion around the interim goal and take it out. I think that's all I've got, Madam Chair, Madam President. Thank you so much, and again, happy to stand for questions. Thank you.
Senator Robinson, for what purpose do you rise?
To ask the bill's sponsor a question.
Senator Newton, do you yield to a question?
I do.
He yields. You may ask your question.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Newton, you may not recall that I was one of the ones who voted against the bill 951, specifically for the issue of low-income people who are already burdened with high energy costs. Now, you just mentioned that, what the governor talked about was low wealth people and all of the issues. Does your bill include any incentive for low-income people in terms of, a reduced rate or something?
Absolutely.
Madam President, other question.
Do you yield for another question?
Can you specify where that is?
It's the removal of the interim goal. If you remove the interim goal, the commission is free to look out in their modeling, their next model, to 2050. If you look to 2050, then the least cost option for low income may be to build a nuclear plant that may not be on the grid for another 10 years, but it's much less expensive for everyone in North Carolina than jamming in near-term more intermittent resources that are forcing the rates higher today than they otherwise would be.
Okay. Just speak on the bill, Madam President.
You have the floor.
Senator Newton, I appreciate that, and even with my intelligence, I'm sure the average individual doesn't even understand all of that. Full transparent, if you would share that information, would have helped a lot. My concern is still the same. Even if all of us share some decrease for the first part of that bill, still the low-income people are suffering. I get the calls all of the time, in terms of the high energy costs. And if plants are built in the second part or whatever, we're going to see the rates increase. So I can't support something that's going to continue to burden the least of these in our state. And that's what we continue to do. While we talk about the burden on them, we continue to pass costs on them that they can't even afford. So I have to vote against this. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Buck Newton, for what purpose do you rise?
To speak to the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank the Majority Leader for bringing this bill to us. Many of you don't know that the senior Senator Newton and I first became acquainted when I was in office before, when I was working on legislation that was designed to do the same thing that this bill is designed to do, and that is to reduce electric bills. Notice how I said that, electric bills. Back when I was in office before, Senator Robinson may remember, I know Senator Blue probably does, worked really hard to work on the buyout for the eastern municipalities to reduce electric rates. And that bill reduced electric rates in 8 months just in the city of Wilson for residential customers more than $10 million in 8 months. And I'll tell you why this motivated me then and why it motivates me now on this bill. Because it's really simple to my colleagues that are inclined to vote against this bill. Poor people have a hard time paying their bill already. People who have been working hard and have a better income still struggle sometimes to pay their electric bill. I'm going to tell you a story. Since y'all like to tell us stories, I think you need to hear one. I remember distinctly a lady that worked at the Arts Council in Wilson. She was a custodial worker, an older lady. And I found out for a fact that every winter she let her electric bill, she let her electricity be cut off. And she kept her food in a cooler on the back porch because she didn't have electricity for her refrigerator, because she couldn't afford her electricity. I had electric bills back then in the middle of the winter at $800 and $900 when we kept our electricity, our thermostat set below 65. You know why electricity is so expensive now, in my opinion? Because we got so doggone many solar panels out there taking up farmland. Because it costs more and it's not free. It's not free when it's mined out of the ground. It's not free when it's going to get disposed of in our dumps. It's subsidized by everybody through our rates. This is a good bill. I first got to know Senator Newton working on that bill because I had to deal with Duke Energy. And I know it's fun to everybody to beat up on Duke. But I got to know this man, and long before he was in office, and he knew what we were trying to do, and I learned a lot from him. And this is very complicated stuff for most of us. But it really is simple. This is about keeping the costs from going up and even higher, and $13 billion is real money. The choice is simple. Are you going to vote to make sure that the rates continue to go up, or are you going to vote to keep the rates down and reasonable? I hope you can explain that to your constituents if you vote no, But I am voting yes for this bill, and I'm voting for the people who have trouble paying their electric bill by voting for this bill. I encourage you to do the same. Thank you.
Senator Mayfield, for what purpose do you rise?
To speak again on the bill.
You have the floor to speak on the bill.
Thank you. I think we're missing the point here, and so I'm just going to say it again. My comments are about showing the math. Okay? We all went to school. We all had teachers who probably told us at some point or another in math class, show your math. Don't just put the answer. You got to show your math. We need to know how you got there. That's the concern about this. I guarantee you that I could take that model and I could rejigger it by moving a few levers here and there to show that the savings might be $15 billion, or maybe only $4 billion, or maybe in fact, if you consider a certain increase in the cost of natural gas, there won't be any savings at all. Models are models. You get out based on what you put in. We don't know what was put in. Nobody is arguing that we should not reduce rates for people. Nobody is arguing that. The point here is that we haven't seen the math, so we have no basis on which to say, yeah, the number's $13 billion. Yep, that's right, we get it. We don't know the answer to that. We don't know if this assumes that a nuclear plant, a big nuclear plant is going to be built. We don't know what assumptions have been put in there about the cost of that. There is no more expensive facility to build than a nuclear plant. And if that's in the model, did that assume that there would be a decade of litigation around that plant? Because that's what's happened with every other plant, every other nuclear plant that has gotten built in this country, which is frankly not very many, but it has been subject to years of litigation. Does it include that? So that's my only point. We want to see the math. We haven't seen the math. Nobody objects to lower rates. And again, it is very challenging when people express concern about energy rates for low-income customers when we offered 24 options for energy efficiency programs that Duke Energy runs in other states and would have been happy to run here, and every single one of them was rejected. Every single one. So it is hard for me to take seriously the concern about low-income customers that's been expressed here today when this body does not seem prepared to tackle that problem in a very targeted way. The savings that might come from this bill are spread generally across the population. They are not targeted. They are not targeted to the people who need it most. Thank you.
Senator Bergen, for what purpose do you rise?
Speak to the bill.
You have the floor to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, I want to thank Senator Newton and his wise counsel on this, but I want to draw attention, I think it's page 3, line 33, that says the Commission can only approve the cost recovery mechanism if it results in proven cost savings for customers. And folks, cost savings is what I think we're talking about here. I know we're talking about it a lot in healthcare and a lot of other areas. A number of us in this body have served as county commissioners. I served for 8 years as county commissioner. And I don't hate any of the electric co-ops, and I don't hate Duke, because I went through hurricanes with them. I went through floods with them. I went through a lot of other things. They were champions, and they were great partners in getting services provided. All we have to do is look out west, and I think people are congratulating Duke especially, and all the folks that have brought thousands and thousands of people from as far away as Canada to get our friends and neighbors' power restored. So, I don't want us to hate anybody, but I especially don't want to hate the people that are doing a great job. Now, yes, we do pay those bills, but I want to remind you of something. Anytime your power's off, I want you to count how many times you flip a switch on when you walk into a room. And ladies and gentlemen, there's very few times that I've had to do that, even in Angier, North Carolina. Thank you.
Is there further discussion or debate? Senator Newton, I think you've spoken twice on the bill.
No, ma'am, I have presented.
You presented and then
Yes,
spoke
Madam
once. You may speak
President,
one more
This
time.
will be
Is
the
this-
last time, I promise, and by rule,
You
I'll be
have the
done.
floor.
So, Senator Mayfield complains that she wants to, see how the math was done. Sometimes in life, when you want to know the details and don't have that opportunity necessarily, it helps to know who ran the math. Who said there was $13 billion of savings if we remove the interim goal? I didn't run that. It was not my math, not my third-party expert. It was the public staff who represents the using and consuming public. That is their statutory charge. And so I think we can easily check the box on that because of who ran the math as opposed to the actual math. The actual math is going to vary depending on who you hire to run the model. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I've seen experts in action. And if you hire them, they're going to try to find the answer you want. But in this case, the public staff ran the numbers. We're talking $13 billion for starters. I personally believe that's low. The last thing, a couple of points I'll make, is it's interesting that Senator Robinson actually made the case for removing the 2050 carbon goal because, folks, don't be confused. Reducing carbon on our grid costs money. Reducing carbon will cost customers across North Carolina money. So the question we're grappling with today is not whether to do that. We're going to keep the 2050 goal. It's just how do we do it in the least expensive way? That's all we're asking, is give the commission the opportunity to actually choose the least cost path forward. And as I sort of debating this bill with Senator Mayfield, I am reminded of a concept called luxury beliefs. And I think that this debate we're having here today is really a debate around luxury beliefs. And a luxury belief is defined as luxury beliefs are ideas and opinions that confer status on the upper class while often inflicting costs on the lower classes. I submit to you members, I don't care if the savings are $1 or $13 billion. If we can save North Carolinians money, we should do it. I ask you to vote for the bill. Thank you.
Senator Grafstein, for what purpose do you rise?
Two very brief points, Senator Lowe and Madam President.
You have the floor to speak on the bill.
Thank you. One is public staff are widely respected. What matters is what information they were asked to run in the models. So we're not in any way disparaging public staff. The question is what the inputs were, which we still don't know. The other second issue that I would like to bring up, Madam President, is that I believe Senator Newton has the oximeter under his desk, and I think it belongs on the top. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, the question before the Senate is the passage of Senate Bill 261 on its second reading. All in favor will vote aye, all opposed will vote no. 5 seconds will be allowed for voting, and the clerk will record the vote. Senator Sawyer, aye. Sawyer, aye. 31 having voted in the affirmative, 12 in the negative. Senate Bill 261 passes its second reading and will be read a third time.
Senate Bill 261, Energy Security and Affordability Act.
Is there further discussion or debate? Hearing none, all in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 261 on its third reading will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 261 passes its third reading and will be sent to the House. For adoption, Senate Resolution 221. The clerk will read.
Senate Resolution 221, confirm Pam Coswell, Secretary in and CR.
Senator Paul Newton, Senator Rabin, sorry, is recognized to explain the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I have an amendment, please.
Set forth your amendment. The clerk will read.
Senator Rabin moves to amend the bill.
Senator Rabin is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you. Members, this is the standard amendment. We offer to make clear that we're voting on the confirmation and not just taking her up, so I would appreciate your support.
Is there discussion or debate on amendment number 1? A leave of absence is requested and without objection is granted for Senator Craven. Is there further discussion or debate on amendment number 1? Hearing none, the question before the body is the adoption of amendment number 1 to Senate Resolution 221. All in favor will vote aye.